Okay, so we're up to way number 29, which is Eno Machzik Tov La'atzmo. What does that mean? It means not claiming credit. Sometimes a difficult one. So imagine winning $1 million lottery, right? You're overjoyed. And would you go around boasting that, hey, aren't I something? I picked the right numbers. I figured out the right location to buy the ticket. Obviously, it's absurd. You thank Hashem for winning $1 million lottery, right? You take pleasure in the gift that Hashem gave you. So taking pleasure but not pride is always the appropriate response to the blessings of our natural talents, of our accomplishments, and our righteous acts. So number one of this is natural talents. Have you ever met someone who boasts about his strong constitution? His friend is sick, has a really bad cold, and he says, "Me, I've never been sick a day in his life." He's, with the boastfulness, right? Others kind of take pride in their good looks, or let's say a pleasant voice, or high cheekbones, or whatever it may be, or natural intelligence, right? These are things that are gifts that we're endowed with. They're not a source of pride, they're a source of pleasure. So we thank Hashem for the gift that He gave us, and we take pleasure in that gift. But if it becomes a source of pride, that's a little bit of a problem. So number two of this is pride in accomplishment. So it's a much greater challenge to not take pride or credit, I should say, for accomplishments you've actually worked hard to achieve. So A of this is, first of all, recognize that you couldn't have done it by yourself. Whether it's a business thing where you had a whole team involved, or it's God-given skills or capabilities that allowed you, or it's resources that you were, enabled to have, right? So all the support that you received along the way, if you recognize that and if you take it into account, it'll kind of right-size the level of pride that you take in it. B of this is don't take pride in having acted rationally, right? Imagine a guy comes over to you and he says, I'm such a savvy businessman. You say, why are you a savvy businessman? He says, I just inherited $5,000 and I went to the bank and I opened a bank account and I put the money in and now I have $5,000, right? I'm so smart. And you look at the person dumbfounded. You're like, yeah, so you acted normally like a normal person would. That's not a source of pride, right? Acting rationally. So, just take pleasure, obviously. If you're utilizing your time properly, that's a rational activity. So take pleasure in the fact that you acted rationally, but don't take pride in it. Don't boast, don't feel arrogant. Look at me, what I've accomplished in just acting rationally. And obviously if you're kind of countering challenges that you've had in acting irrationally, you can take a certain amount of pleasure and even pride if that pride spurs you on. But don't take credit for it, right? Don't reach the point where you say to yourself, "Look at me, look what I've done, look what I've accomplished." Recognize again that it's an effort that is enabled by Hashem, and therefore you can take a certain amount of pleasure in it, but don't let it reach the point of pride. C of this is avoiding self-destructive activities also doesn't really deserve pride. Again, similarly to what I said before, if a person is overcoming a self-destructive behavior, then taking a certain measure of pride in the accomplishment is relevant and important as a motivation to going forward, but there's a limit to how much pride a person should take. Reb Noach gives a cute story of a guy who comes over to you and he says, "Wow, I can't believe I made it through last night unscathed." And you go, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, I was in a restaurant and I was eating steak in the steakhouse and I had this uncontrollable urge to cut my nose off my face with my knife. And you know what? I managed to knock the knife out of my hand." Right? Okay, so you avoided being self-destructive, not exactly something that you deserve a tremendous amount of accolades for. So self-accolades are similar. Lastly, D of this is to gain some perspective. Enjoy the accomplishment, but have humility to realize that you are so much more than that, and that you could do so much more than that, and that should humble one. Okay, number 3 of this is beware of arrogant people. Okay, so arrogant people are consumed with themselves. And by the way, there's a direct connection between the pride that we take in our accomplishments and reaching the point of arrogance. And that's why it's really, really important to recognize the difference between pleasure and pride. Take pleasure, but not pride, because pride leads to arrogance. And arrogance is something that is extremely destructive. So if you encounter an arrogant person, recognize that they're likely not even realizing you're there except as a prop for them, right? So an arrogant person looks down on other people and is willing to step all over them as if they're obstacles or when they are obstacles in their path. So pride leads to contempt, arrogance leads to contempt, humility leads to compassion and gratitude. It takes humility to make space for other people and to treat them with respect and care, regardless of where they fall on the scale of capabilities and strengths that you feel you possess. Number 4 of this is recognize that the pride and arrogance that comes from taking credit for your own accomplishments, God forbid for others' accomplishments, but even for your own accomplishments, leads to arrogance, and arrogance is inherently the biggest obstacle to wisdom. Right? If you're arrogant, you can't learn from other people. The Mishnah Masechtas Avos in Ethics of Our Fathers says, right, it actually tells us two different things about who's a wise person. But this one in the first chapter tells us, Ezu Chacham Halomed Mikal Adam, who is a wise person, one who learns from everybody. Having the ability to learn from everybody requires a great degree of humility. Insanely, we can see some of the most seemingly arrogant people in the world, and I'm thinking of a certain politician in particular, that actually have a deep-seated humility and are willing to learn from virtually anyone, which is a fascinating thing to see. So it is possible to portray yourself as almost a caricature of arrogance and still have deep-seated humility and your willingness to learn from other people. When you're humble, you're willing to be shown that you're wrong and therefore to grow from the experience. So number 5 of this is what's the best medicine against arrogance? So when a truly great person walks into a room, the big talker quiets down immediately, right? So the best medicine against arrogance is recognizing that God put us on this world to achieve great things. And that no matter what we've accomplished, we are still far, far, far away from everything that we could and should accomplish. Imagine a guy tells you that he's congratulating himself for buying a piece of property for $10,000 and flipping it for $25,000 to Joe, right? And then you hear 2 weeks later that Joe sold it to a condo development company for $1 million, right? All of a sudden, your great accomplishment of making 2.5 times your money doesn't feel like such a great accomplishment at all, right? And that's the way we have to treat our accomplishments in life. They're scratching the surface. They're a starting point, but we have a long way to go. So when you feel yourself becoming proud, right, of your accomplishments or proud of who you are, any other factors, even those that are worthy of a certain level of pride, remind yourself that you have a lot more to accomplish to achieve true greatness. So some applied wisdom ideas that Noach shares. 1, describe 3 of your greatest strengths and talents, and then take pleasure in them, but thank Hashem for them. And then number 2, in terms of applied wisdom, is think of 3 accomplishments that you're proud of, and then take a moment to describe all the assistance and circumstances and resources that helped you get to those great accomplishments.